meme review. Hey guys, what's up? It's Leet Speak is Dead, and I'm here with actually a Fallout 76 review. And right here we're going to be discussing what's good and what's bad about Fallout 76. You know, the stuff that people really hate and the stuff that people think are great. Wow. And I know I've only been running for this channel for about a month, and I've already fallen into a downward spiral. Alright, so let's take a look at some of that stuff. Now, I've seen a lot of Fallout beta reviews on just what gameplay there is, but I haven't really seen a lot of full release reviews, or Let's Plays for that matter. And I think the reason this is that people have already written off Fallout 76 as kind of a shitty game. And, you know, maybe that's not the right response to something. Because after the release, I believe a lot of things got better. You know, my game only happened to crash once. And I enjoyed gameplay. I really did. But it wasn't perfect, and this video is here to just share with you some of my, I guess, critiques about the game. One of the things that I thought was really bad was the textures, obviously. I'm not a very nitpicky person on textures. One of my favorite games is Unturned, and it's basically Minecraft. And Unturned is fun, you know. It's an interesting game, and that's why I like it. But the texture quality doesn't have to be perfect, and it worked with that style of game. With Fallout 76, it felt like they should have improved on some textures that were just crap awful in Fallout 4, but it feels like they reused a lot of it, which I get it, you know, enjoy a little bit of creative laziness, but also, I think they were trying to release a new experience from the ground up, which requires you to kind of build a lot of the world, or rebuild it. What I saw was a lot of potato-looking, you know, kind of things here and there, and that just made me go, But I was already used to that from Fallout 4, so. And graphic problems weren't just limited to potato-looking textures. There were also times in multiplayer where your teammates' outfits wouldn't load in, and there were times when I loaded in onto the server, my guns wouldn't load for 30 seconds. Sometimes I tried to pull them out. It just looked like I was trying to punch someone with a piece of floating screws and wood. I think this is a point where I harp on the game most in my video, and that's because a lot of people need to see what they're doing, to be quite honest, which is, it's kind of hard to do when everything looks like shitty quality. I think a lot of people were expecting for the game to improve its graphics after Fallout 4, and they were harping on the fact that Todd Howard said they need to use the old engine, which I agree with the people that are harping on that. And I'm hitting this point, and I'm hitting the graphics problems home the hardest, because it's supposed to really tie the game together, and it doesn't as much as I'd like. I think the reason why they're using live ads right now, you know, actors, is because they don't want to kind of showcase the bad graphics they're using. On to my next point, and that point is the multiplayer. It's great, you know. One of the things that people have been harping on Bethesda for years is not having multiplayer gameplay besides Elder Scrolls Online. Which, when I took a look at that, it didn't seem very good. It was pretty good, and Elder Scrolls is doing great right now. It's thriving. Which, I think Fallout 76 has a lot of potential for that. And the multiplayer is just, it's pretty good. You know, I played with my friends for a little bit, and they enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was a pretty good experience. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be good, but it was definitely getting there multiplayer-wise. On to my next point, which is hate more than great. It's the lore, and it's not really something that I hate, rather than I just kind of don't like Bethesda doing. It's just that Bethesda kind of just swiped the lore away, which, to an extent, it's very common, I guess you could say, because over time things do develop, but it felt like Bethesda was just trying to recreate the Fallout with the same basic details, but more intricately, they were different. And some people hate them for that, which I get, It's not every day where you walk in and it's something completely new, something completely different than the story you loved. Which actually brings me to my kind of just surface point for, I guess, advice for people. Don't take this game as an extension or a new game entirely. I think it's somewhere in between, because it has a lot of potential for it to be a really good game. And it gets boring at times, really boring after a while, which is something I'll talk about a little later. But in a sense, Fallout 76 is something quite new for Bethesda in the realm of just kind of poking at what they can do with Fallout. And I think a lot of people enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it. And I think over time, Fallout 76 will grow more popular. And it will get better. It's just that right now, it's not to that point. And that kind of makes me feel a little sad for it. And another hate here is the boringness. After a while, it felt like I was pretty overpowered. I got to a pretty good level, and when I looked around, it was a lot of fetch quests. There weren't a lot of people to interact with. It wasn't really something I enjoyed, but I think it's part of the Fallout experience to a certain point. With Fallout 4, you had a lot of the same things, just traveling places. And I think a lot of people focus on it being boring with there being no human NPCs, but it got me really good. I was enveloped when I first got it. I was completely sucked in, which I enjoyed it. A lot of people harp on Fallout 76, and I'm not sure why. Because there are a lot of things that are wrong with it, but there are a lot of good things too. Personally, for me, I think a really high point is the potential it has. The new enemies it kind of brings. The Scorched are a pretty interesting enemy in particular that I kind of looked at and said, wow, that's kind of neat. But otherwise, the game really has no lore value. It feels like fluff right now. A really low point was the spending caps to travel everywhere. To fast travel, you spent caps. It felt like I was just leaking money out of my pockets when all I wanted to do was hop skip to my next destination. It felt like instead of wanting me to just go places and complete things, Bethesda really wanted to draw out its time with forcing people to either walk or kill enemies around them to find the caps. Bethesda is kind of trying to keep you there, and it felt really grounding. I was really ashamed of how many caps I was spending, because to get certain places, it wasn't that bad. It was just like 1-2 caps, depending on your distance. But in other places, it was 30 caps, and I really didn't want to walk. And sometimes I couldn't afford it. I was forced to walk a certain distance before going to somewhere, which I didn't really enjoy. It's more prevalent that I would enjoy this function more with groups And I think that's a point I have to highlight. With groups, the game is at its fullest point. Solo, it's at its lowest. Because in groups, you're not really caring about the lore. It's about the experience you have with each other. And traveling is always an adventure because you find these new places and you're kind of talking about it with your friends the next day, oh, how we went to that house on the hill and there was a stash of caps there. That was great. But solo, I don't know. It felt really fluffed. It felt really boring. And I think that's where the game highlights its low points, when you're playing solo. And it can still be intoxicating and drown you in it, but there's a sort of unmotivated task in it. Like, why am I playing this game right now? Sometimes the mindlessness is okay. It's great. But on a certain level, I kind of hate Bethesda for making this more about the multiplayer experience than anything else. I think, in conclusion, that this game is neither good nor bad. On a 1 to 10 scale, I'd have to rate it a 6. And here's why. A lot of people are ripping on it because they don't think it's a good game, but I think it's a perfectly okay game, as long as you're playing with friends. The textures didn't really matter during that. You kind of talked it down with your friends and like, oh, these textures are really shit. They were pretty, alright. You just talked about how you wasted money on the game, which it felt like it was a little bit of a waste. But when you're with friends, it didn't matter as much. When you're solo, it mattered a lot more. In a wrap-up, I think that if you don't really want to connect to the internet to play, or you aren't looking for that multiplayer experience, buy Fallout 4 instead. Buy Fallout 4 Game of the Year Edition. It's much cheaper at this point. But if you are looking to play with friends, and if you are looking for that kind of, that kind of just nostalgia when you're playing it, buy Fallout 76, definitely. It's not that bad to where you have to pound it into the ground.